Hi patrons, Janet Boyer here. First I want to thank you very much for supporting me and my work with the Tarot Lookalikes videos. I appreciate it so much, and I want to say thanks to my son, cameraman, and director Noah Boyer behind the camera for helping me out with lighting and visuals so I can bring these videos to you. The first topic we're going to talk about for Tarot Lookalikes is beginnings. I figured that was appropriate since we're starting a new year. Now, there are several cards that many ascribe the meaning beginnings to. And these include the Four Aces, Death, the World, and the Fool. Let's start with the Four Aces. If you have a tarot deck at home, you can feel free to pull the Four Aces out of your favorite deck or a Rider-Waite deck, or you don't need to, you can just watch me. The thing about aces is they're really not technically beginnings. A lot of times people put these as the beginnings of, and it could be true to an extent, but for the most part, the aces are nothing but seeds, seeds of potential. Think of them as doorways or windows, or a hoop that you can jump through, or even a baton that you could grab. It's all dependent upon if a person sees the opportunity, let alone if he then grabs it and takes it. Just like an acorn. Yes, an acorn contains the seed and the potential for a huge, towering oak tree, but a lot of things can happen between the acorn stage and the full-grown oak stage. Animals like a squirrel or a bird could, take the acorn for food, or the environment could destroy the acorn, or it could just never take root because of the environment, the weather, or the soil's bad, or what have you. So the acorn itself is not really a beginning. And technically, even if a seedling started, I've seen some tarot decks where they've showed the Ace of Coins, for example, as a seedling sprouting. Yes, it has started, but even then it's tenuous because the environment or an animal could eat it. It's not rooted enough to withstand everyday adversity. In the case of a plant, whether it's the wind or the environment or animals. So is it a start? Technically, yes. Is it a beginning? Yes, if it's a seedling. But the aces themselves really are just opportunities. They're potentials. I would say the twos are more about beginnings because somebody has taken one of the aces and done something with it. So let's go to the aces and we'll go ace by ace to talk about the beginnings. Now, Pentacles is a material suit. That's everything that has to do with the material realm. That could be health, finances, your environment, your possessions, your house, your land, anything like that. The Ace of Pentacles is basically saying you have an opportunity to invest in that realm, or perhaps even an invitation to improve that realm. Maybe starting a new eating regime, or a new exercise regime, or buy a piece of property, things like that. And notice how that is like a doorway in the Ace of Pentacles and the Rider-Waite. But there's nobody here that is grabbing it yet. So again, it's potential. First the person has to notice it, and then they have to take it out of the hand, so to speak, whether it's providence or luck or opportunity, and then they have to do something with it. So see why I don't technically consider the aces as beginnings yet? Same way with the Ace of Cups. The cups are the water realm of emotions, relationships, dreams, hopes, intuition, love, forgiveness, things like that. But again, it's still an opportunity. We still have the hand offering it to us, whether it's the divine, God, another person. It's being handed. But whether or not we actually take the cup and drink the water and take it into our being and allow it to transform us, it's still just potential. It's not necessarily the beginnings of a relationship. It looks good though. It's saying that there's going to be an opportunity for a new relationship. Perhaps in a reading, going to meet someone, or an opportunity for forgiveness. Your heart will be softened enough towards a person who's done you wrong, and have compassion and be able to forgive them. But again, it's an opportunity, and there has to be the act of taking the cup, taking it into yourself, and allowing it to transform you for it to be a start. Ace of Wands, again, this is enthusiasm, passion. The Wands is all about energy, new projects, vocation, sometimes even creativity. But, you know, again, if you imagine this as a baton in a relay race, you still have to grab it and run. I mean, if a person was running a relay race and they didn't grab the baton, then they wouldn't be able to complete the race. Yes, the potential is there to win, the potential is there to finish the race, but the baton has to be taken. So sometimes, you know, with projects, people are good starters and they're not necessarily good finishers. And that's because, you know, in the initial stages, there's a lot of enthusiasm and what ifs, but in order for it to even begin, you have to actually start doing something with it. Like in the Rider-Waite, where the Two of Wands, the guy is, you know, standing there looking out at the water. You know, he's actually grabbed the baton and he's thinking, okay, how am I going to plan? You know, how am I going to bring this passion, this excitement? How am I going to do something with it, you know, to bring it out of that realm of just feeling? And then there's the Ace of Swords. It's the bright idea card. Again, you have to do something with these ideas when they come. You have to literally grab it and run with it in order to bring it into fruition, because the idea realm is airy, and, you know, this is decisions, this is the intellect, logic, idea, judgment, assumptions. But again, you have to do something with it in order for it to become an actual beginning. I'll give an example. In about 2006 or 7, I had the idea for my book, Back in Time Tarot, and I had it in the bathtub, as I have a lot of my ideas actually. And I had the idea of how to create a method that makes it easy for people to learn the cards, and it's a method that I used myself. But then I had the idea of calling it Back in Time Tarot. I saw in my mind how to format the book, and I thought of the first person I would contact to ask if they would submit a bit snapshot. But that was just an Ace of Swords moment. I could have towed off, decided to go and write about it and put it in my idea jar, or think about it perhaps in the future, but it would be no beginning then. It was just the Ace of Swords. I was given the opportunity, I had an idea, what would I do with it? Well, I was so excited that I towed off, and I ran right downstairs and I shot an email off to a colleague of mine, and I said, look, I have an idea for this book. This is what it'll be called. This is what a bit snapshot looks like. Would you submit one? Within an hour, he submitted, I think it was 30 minutes, he submitted a complete bit snapshot to me. That was enough to, then I consider that was the beginning. That is when I started the project, because I had the idea, I wrote it down, but then I contacted the colleague, he submitted it back to me, but then I had to take the idea and I had to query a publisher. So technically the beginning would probably be the contract, because even then, just because I had an idea, and just because my colleague submitted a bit snapshot, and just because I've created a couple bit snapshots, it was still not necessarily a beginning. It was still in an idea realm. But once I queried and signed the contract, well, then that is a beginning, because then it's something that I'm working against and working towards a deadline. So those are the aces. So again, I mean, if you want to, interpret them as starts and beginnings, you can. But these are my reasons why I wouldn't necessarily consider them bona fide hitting the ground running starts. For example, New Year's, I would consider that like Ace of Swords or even Ace of Wands. Yes, good intentions, but we know hell is paid, with good intentions, because intentions mean nothing unless you start following through. So is it a beginning, a resolution? I really don't think so, because you haven't put legs to it. You haven't actually started to bring it into the physical realm. Now, another card that is sometimes associated with beginnings is death. People get in their ideas that if there is an ending embodied in a card, then it must, by nature, mean it is a beginning. Again, not necessarily, because as you probably know in life, whether it's somebody passing away, or a job ending, or something happening with our health that could be devastating, or a major change in life, a new beginning isn't always around a corner. So a death isn't necessarily a new beginning, contrary to what other people say. I mean, yes, there's the potential, there's the sun there. There is a potential for rising, but again, there is a lot of processing that has to, go with the death card. Death is a transition. Death is something that you really see coming, and you either resist it and cause yourself a lot of suffering and pain, or you welcome it and allow it to happen. But regardless, there's usually some tears that are cried. See the water there? It hits everybody. As you can see, there's kings, there's lowly people, there's children, there's old people. Things like death and change, significant change, touches everyone. So again, I don't consider death as heralding a beginning. In a tarot reading, I just think the universe, if the universe is going to, or intuition, or chance, or synchronicity, or whatever you want to ascribe to how tarot cards work, if the divine wanted to give a message of new beginnings, I think he would pick something, better than death. Now, of course, it depends on the other cards that come before and after. I mean, if you have death and an ace, well, then there's a promise right after that perhaps it'll be a quick transition, not something that will hang on. But again, that's my opinion. The same way, well, with our Snowland deck, our death card is called Impermanence. And so, our snowman has melted, and the evaporation process has begun, and he's winking at us, letting us know that he has a transformed form. There's that law that says nothing can be created nor destroyed, it is just transformed. But again, is it a new beginning yet? He's merely an evaporated form. He hasn't yet condensed again, turned into snow, and also children have to come along and reform him. So there's a lot of, and that's another thing I think with beginnings, sometimes it's dependent upon the actions of other people as well. Like with my book Back in Time Tarot, if my colleague hadn't got a bit snapshot back to me, would I have had the impetus to create a few more bit snapshots, reach out to someone else and maybe query? I don't know. There is such a perfect storm sometimes with ideas and beginnings, enthusiasm, collaboration, timing. So, it depends. That's another thing about beginnings. It's right out of the gate. But if you've ever seen a horse race, sometimes a horse goes right out of the gate and ends up stumbling. You just never know. So it is a start and it is a beginning, but it is not a promise of fruition. It's not a promise of stability. It's not a promise that it's going to turn into something big. The world is another one that sometimes people use for beginnings. They say, well, the world is the ending, completion, so therefore embodied in it must be a beginning. Again, I think this is a potential card. I think the world is, a major archetype, so we're talking about big picture completions and accomplishments. But again, it's like a doorway. It's like a window. In some decks, this is a Mandorla or even a Vesica Pisces, which represents a female opening to give birth. So again, there is potential for starting, there's potential for new life, but as with women who get pregnant, I mean, there's plenty that can happen between then and the birthing process before the child gives its first breath. There could be stillborn, there could be problems, breach, and so, I'm speaking in metaphors here, but isn't that what tarot cards are? So, is the world a new beginning? It could be. Because something has just been completed. It is wrapping up things. It is, tying all the bows. It is finishing all the unfinished business, dotting the last I and crossing the last T. So yes, inherent in that, it could be, but again, I really wouldn't consider this a starting and a beginnings card. So what card, you might ask, do you consider a starting or beginning card? The Fool. And as you can see, he's already walking. He's already in motion, and he is going to take that step off that cliff. Is he going to fall, or do you think maybe there's actually a step beyond that, or do you think the divine will catch him? We're not sure, but the point is he is moving forward. His eyes are forward, his head is back in confidence, and he said, I'm doing this. And despite, the dog maybe saying, watch what you're doing, or you got to be careful, he's like, I'm doing this. And with our Snowland deck, our Fool card happens to be a sled rider. And again, he is perched on the hill. He is ready to take his plunge down the hill. As you can see, there's even a little bit of snow. He has already jostled some snow. The dog's like, I'm not sure this is a good idea. It's kind of a big hill. And there's some risk involved and some beginnings. And so I would consider the Fool a start card, a beginning, a fresh start. It could be a blank slate. The tabula rasa, I consider this the blank slate card, where you can kind of write your own ticket, determine your destiny. And a lot of times the Fool can't happen right after the Aces. So, for example, you know, when you have the opportunity to forgive someone, you know, the Ace of Cups, right after that there is, you know, that opportunity to become the Fool and to believe and love again. Or if, let's say, you've experienced betrayal or heartache or whatever, you know, the forgiveness and the hope, and then you start out in the Fool and you enter the dating game again. Like a fool, you know, you're actually starting to make actions and decisions, and you're actually walking and putting some feet to those. So those are my ideas of the differences between the Four Aces, Death, World, and the Fool when it comes to starts and beginnings. So take the information, think about it, chew on it, look at the past readings you've done for either yourself or clients, see how it's played out for you. And if, you know, in your own readings you have found that indeed the Aces have indicated a start, you know, we'll continue to keep reading it that way. I'm just speaking from my perspective as a teacher and as a reader, how I would read them and how I would see them and how they differ in energy from the other cards that are considered starts. So again, to sum up, I consider the Four Aces to be windows of opportunity, doors of opportunity. They are hands that are coming out of the clouds, and it's up to you whether or not you want to grab it. Just like, you know, in our snowland, again, you know, there is a milkshake, there's a sundae, and there is actually a snowman there, and he's reaching out for whether it's the sword or the match, but he hasn't yet gotten it. So remember that. The Aces are like windows. The World is, yes, something significant has wrapped up and does lay a good foundation for starts, but you have to see what the other cards are. Death, there's so much that goes on with the process of transformation and transition with death that I really don't think that it indicates starts and new beginnings again. So I would consider the Fool to be the card that most embodies starts and beginnings. So Happy New Year, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.